We have made it. It's been long months of waiting. It's been long months of watching baseball, watching golf, going on summer vacations, all leading up to this. College football is back. Week 0, we have made it. And yes, I call it week 0 because that's what it says on ESPN. It's tradition, and I don't shy away from it. I remember back when I was producing with Travis and Ross, they always hated calling it week 0, but it's week 0. All the big games and all the big names usually start that following week, but we got one hell of a week 1 start of the season kickoff that we are going to break down for you all throughout this week on the Media Row podcast with me, Justin Miller. Happy to have you guys back for a brand new week. A lot of fun stuff planned ahead for this week, especially with the Iowa State and Kansas State game getting ready to kick off in Dublin on Saturday at 11 a.m. So, welcome everyone to the Media Row podcast with me, Justin Miller, sponsored by Kelly's Little Nipper and Stevens Automotive and Sales. Happy to have you guys along here. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, rate, all that good stuff. We're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on TikTok, everywhere that you can get a podcast. Go to it, Spotify, Apple, iHeart even. It's funny enough. So make sure to check us out anywhere. But like I said, full week plan, 3 full shows. We're getting back on schedule after the crazy summer vacations have finally ended. And we are kicking off today with a guy that I always really enjoyed interviewing and always gave great insight to kind of the Big 12 as a whole, and especially with the team that he covers in Kansas State, is Cole Carmody from 24/7 Sports. Had him on when I was the host of the Iowa State Fast Break, a podcast over there at iHeart, and he's been great enough to find time in his busy schedule to join us here today to give us the Kansas State viewpoint from Dublin and just what is happening with the hype for this season with the Wildcats and what they need to do to stay on that hype train as they go up against rivals Iowa State, a team that they have struggled against in recent years. So this will be a really fun show. And then on Wednesday, we'll get the Iowa State point of view from John Walters, of course, the play-by-play voice for the Iowa State Cyclones. And then Friday, it's just a fun prediction podcast day of talking about week 0 and my viewpoints from the Iowa State-Kansas State game, from what we've learned from these 2 interviews that we're getting ready to have. But before we get to our interview with Cole, need to give a shout out to our very first sponsor on this show that we got, Kelly's Little Nipper, 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. Historic Kelly's Little Nipper. Not only are they great for food, drink, and community, they're just the best place to go for really anything you would want from a bar and restaurant. You have live music on the weekends. You have trivia nights on Wednesdays. You have deals constantly throughout the week. And you have a group of people that want to support, whether it's local media, the local teams. They're back with Drake football once again. So you just have people where the hearts are in the right place here in this community. And that's a rare thing to find as well as a place as good and as different as Kelly's Little Nipper. So go check it out for yourself. At 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines, Kelly's Little Nipper. Make sure to use that keyword Woodley. Your first beer is on the house. And I still, to this day, can't believe Jeff is letting me do this deal for you guys. So make sure to go to Kelly's Little Nipper, say thanks to Jeff, and make sure to let them know that Media Rose sent you. Cole, first and foremost, I know you had to do some shuffling schedule-wise, and I just really appreciate that. So thank you for coming on the show. Always appreciate it when we were doing the radio call-ins for the Iowa State Fast Break that we did.
Yeah, man, it's fun. K-State, Iowa State, I always love talking about it. It's a great rivalry, and these fan bases are so similar. You and I were kind of talking before we started to record, but like, man, going to Ireland is going to be so cool. I'm getting a chance to do it. I know there's a lot of folks from Iowa heading up there as well. The fan bases are so similar. I can't wait to see how Midwesterners interact with people from Dublin. It's going to be awesome.
And we were talking too before we clicked record of just, yeah, as a fan, it would be nice to chalk a W, to start the year. But at the same time, I mean, you can't ask for a better way to start the season. You know, two ranked opponents, it's a rivalry conference game, and it should just be a really fun atmosphere.
It should be. And I mean, all eyes of college football will be on Farmageddon, which makes it, that much cooler. I wish that college game day was going to be there. I think the added wrinkle of Lee Corso not being able to go and, his last game is going to be week 1, Ohio State and Texas, maybe played a factor into it. And they went last year. But either way, I mean, ESPN's running promotions for it. It's all over the sports world right now, and it's going to be really cool to see everybody paying attention to these two squads.
And it's crazy too, because when all the conference, realignments were happening, this was one of the games people feared they were just going to kind of toss to the side.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Iowa State fans, I can, the Cy-Hop game with Iowa State and Iowa is always a big deal every single year. I know Iowa State and K-State's not at that level, but I mean, this is one of the longest running rivalries in all of college football. So the fact that it's getting played now on an international scale, I think is going to really open some eyes to the college football world and, maybe even just the globe in general. Folks who are tuning in and watching some college football for the first time are going to see hopefully a really fun game.
I mean, all the months of like summer vacations, yeah, those are fun and I love summer, but man, like this whole week, I'm getting geared up for this week 0 matchup, and there's just so much hype surrounding it. So I wanted to get you on to give us the Kansas State preview side of things. And to start, Kansas State, I mean, they're the favorite to win the Big 12. They're dependable, only Big 12 team to win 9+ games in the past 3 seasons. But the hype surrounding this team this season just feels a little different. And why is that?
I think it's because they have so much returning. Anytime you have a quarterback back, Iowa State obviously understands that with Rocco Becht, but K-State does with Avery Johnson, now his second year as the starting quarterback. They also get their quarterback of the defense back, Austin Romaine, who's consistently graded out as one of the best linebackers according to Pro Football Focus in all the country. He's back at middle linebacker, so you got your quarterback, you got your middle linebacker, and then, a lot of folks are really excited about what Dylan Edwards can bring to the table. DJ Giddens was the main guy last year. He's now with the Indianapolis Colts. Dylan Edwards is kind of that second running back, that gadget player. A lot of folks saw what he did when he played at Colorado under Deion Sanders that first year. Showed some flashes for K-State last year. He is expected to kind of be the feature back, and with Avery and Dylan, those two guys, there's a lot of team speed. That's the thing I think a lot of folks are really excited about is just how fast and how athletic this K-State team can be. We've seen them be really good in the trenches. Well, now they've added some speed, and I think that's what really makes this team so intriguing, and is the reason why they have such a high ceiling.
And then you brought up Avery Johnson. That is the name everyone thinks of with this team, especially on the offensive side. Year 1 to year 2, just kind of the changes, the obstacles, the advancement that you've heard, or maybe going to spring games that you've seen yourself. Just what have you seen from this young quarterback that gives you hope and maybe makes you go, oh, okay, now I understand why there's so much hype on this team?
Yeah, I think his ability to adapt, his ability to take care of the football, those are two things that have really improved this spring. But on top of that, Justin, he's gained 15 pounds of muscle. And, it's very easy for folks, on the outside, be like, oh, every quarterback puts on muscle. And like, I agree. But the fact that Avery Johnson's a running quarterback, and now he's going to be, you would assume, a little bit better able to protect himself, to take some of those hits, to get back up because it was pretty apparent last year that he played injured at the end of the season. And I think that really kind of limited what K-State could do offensively. He was still in there and he still put up some good numbers, but they didn't have the design quarterback runs that they had at the beginning part of the season. And so now the fact that Avery's put on that muscle, he has another year with Matt Wells as his quarterback coach, who's now the offensive coordinator. I think that the added muscle and just the ability to learn the system and take care of the football are only going to make him a better player.
You bring up taking care of the football. Is that the biggest point of emphasis for Avery Johnson in particular of for this team to be successful this year, for them to reach the goals that people have set for them? It really lies on his shoulders of protecting the ball.
I think it has to. I mean, they were really, really good last year when he didn't turn the football over. And I think it's easy, for folks to be like, well, of course, if you don't turn the football over, you win, right? And that makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense. But I mean, think about a guy like Jameis Winston, who he turned the ball over, but he also throws a lot of touchdown passes, right? the thing about Avery Johnson is that when he turned the ball over, he typically didn't have a very good game. So in the games in which he didn't turn the ball over, he was putting up those ridiculous numbers. And I think finding a way to be more consistent, like every quarterback's going to throw interceptions, every offense is going to turn the football over. Well, how do you overcome that? How do you move forward from that mistake and make sure it doesn't happen again? I think with Avery, that maturity is going to make it so where it's easier for him to, okay, you throw an interception in the second quarter, well, that's all they're going to get, right? Because before we saw it happen against BYU last year, it just snowballed out of control, and it was, it wouldn't stop rolling downhill. I don't think that that's going to happen for K-State this season because the quarterback has matured that much, and it's a lot of folks forget, like the kid's 19 years old, trying to be a quarterback in the Big 12. There's some kids who can do it, but there's other kids who it takes some time and some time to mature. I think Avery's done that maturing this offseason.
So what's the biggest question mark as a whole for Kansas State? You brought up they return, what is it, 14 guys, 11 guys,
Mhm.
11 starters. One of the more comebacks for a team in the Big 12 right now. Just what's the biggest question mark as a whole?
I think the offensive line, I think that's probably the biggest question mark simply because offensive coordinator and offensive line coach Connor Riley, he took a job as the offensive line coach with the Dallas Cowboys in the offseason, and that was a great move for him. Chris Kleiman's talked about multiple times. He said, "Hey, if you have a chance to take a job like that, you have to take that job. Like they want
Yeah.
you, you have to go. I mean, they can't turn down the NFL." So I think that losing him, he was one of the better offensive line coaches in the country. That's going to have a little bit of an effect. I think just the fact they brought in some new guys, they like who they brought in on the transfer portal side, but you never really know until you put the pads on, you play week one. So I think that that's a position I'm going to be watching closely. I'm also going to be watching the cornerbacks. They returned two of their starters in the bowl game, but anytime you lose an NFL cornerback, Jacob Parrish is now with the Bucks. That's a position you're going to want to have to look at. And then the last thing would be the wide receiver spot. They feel really good about Jace Brown, who was the leading receiver. He's back, but beyond that, there are some depth question marks. They brought in a guy by the name of Jaron Bradley. He had some success from Matt Wells at Texas Tech, kind of a bigger body receiver. Was at Boston College last year, didn't really produce. But the guy they're really excited about, and one player who I think is going to really stand out on this offense is Jerron Tibbs. He was the leading receiver at Purdue last year. Now, Purdue obviously went 1-11, wasn't the greatest team around, but he transfers in from Purdue. They're really excited about him. But honestly, Justin, if I were to tell you what the biggest question mark is, what I'm going to be looking at, I'm going to be looking at the offensive line.
How does that play into like what they need to do to come out victorious against Iowa State? Just the offensive line with Iowa State, they're one of the better teams, bringing back a lot on defense, so a lot rides on that side of the ball for them.
Yeah, I mean, Iowa State's defensive line is really good. And so, how is K-State able to protect Avery Johnson? I think that, Iowa State secondary, they have two frontline guys, two all Big 12 guys. Beyond that, who is going to step up and be that number two corner? Who's going to step up and be that number three safety? Is K-State going to look at that and say, okay, there's a guy out here who hasn't played that much? Are they going to try and use their offensive weapons and expose that one guy? I could see them trying to do that because Iowa State they do return a lot, but there also isn't as much depth as there has been in the past. And so where does K-State try to take advantage on that side of the ball? But I think that the offensive line has to play well because again, like you just mentioned, they do return a lot. So how is the offensive line going to hold up to that pressure, especially on the interior? I think it's something to watch. The starting left tackle coming into the season was an Ohio State transfer, George Fitzpatrick. He had a medical incident, so he's not going to play in this game. So that means that a backup tackle is going to step in. John Pastore was out all of last season with an injury, but they really like him, so we'll see. But I'd say there's probably about 7 or 8 guys that can play along that offensive line. So finding out who plays well together is going to be just as important than anything in this game.
Where did the tight ends land for Kansas State? Because with Iowa State, I mean, losing two 1,000 yards receivers,
Right.
for me, that's the position I think most people are going to be looking at for Iowa State is, man, Rocco's got to have a quick dump down and he's got Ben Bramer healthy. For Kansas State, they have a really good tight end in Oakley who had 5 touchdowns, over 230 yards. Where does that play in Kansas State's game plan for not only Iowa State, but just the future of the season?
Yeah, I mean they love their tight ends. K-State absolutely loves their tight ends. Every single tight end, just like Iowa State, they get back all their tight ends. And so that I don't think it's crazy to say that you have, two of the top five tight end rooms in all of college football, kicking things off. I think it's really cool to be honest with you because that's such a big time position in the NFL now, and both of these schools, have produced successful college guys. I think that K-State loves to use their tight ends, and you mentioned Garrett Oakley. He's a guy that kind of stands out. Will Swanson was voted as an all first team guy. He's more of a fullback tight end. They'll use him a lot, kind of as a blocking tight end. Braden Lofton caught several touchdowns last season. But the guy who I think has a chance to maybe not make an impact week 0, but moving on throughout the season is Lincoln Cure. This is a 5-star tight end who first ever 5-star Kansas State's landed. He's from Western Kansas, a small town, Goodland, Kansas. We'll see how much, if at all, he plays in week 0, but the coaches, really like his potential, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him make an appearance in Dublin because this kid is really athletic. But overall, I'm really optimistic about this Kansas State tight end room.
First 5-star, like out of any position, or just first
First,
five?
first 5-star, any position, the first 5-star ever signed, which is
That kind
pretty
of blows me away.
pretty. Yeah, it is. It's crazy to think about, but with the new recruiting landscape, I think we're going to start to see more schools like K-State, like Iowa State, land some of these kids because you know what? If you can win and you can pay them, that's kind of how it is now, then they're going to want to come to your school.
You're the recruiting editor, right, for 24/7 with Kansas State. How has the whole college landscape really changed your job of like, is it just 20, I mean, 24/7
Yeah,
is the name. It's just constant. You're trying to have dinner with the family and your phone's going off the hook.
it is. It's crazy. And there's so much stuff out there that like even coaches don't know. Like how much money is this kid getting from this school? Well, he didn't really say. We've heard it's this much. So trying to cover that aspect of it, but I find it fascinating now like before the number for NIL will just kind of be hidden, like it really wouldn't be talked about.
Mhm.
Now it feels like kids want that number to get out there because they can go to their coach and be like, "You see, Iowa State's going to offer me 100,000. You need to
Yeah.
offer me 110,000." And then the most of the times the coaches will be like, "Okay, see ya. We don't need you." But still, it definitely has changed the job for sure.
And so, with all the hype around Kansas State, is it really college football playoff appearance, Big 12 title, or bust for this team? Is it that high of expectations?
It feels like it. It really does. I mean, that's kind of been the talk this offseason. I think that this team can be really good. I've gone on the record and said I think they're going to have a great chance to make it to the Big 12 championship game, but it's strange because in this 12 team playoff, like you can lose a game or two. The loser of this game in Dublin is by far not eliminated. Like they're not eliminated from college football playoff contention. They're not eliminated from the Big 12 title contention. This would be really cool, and I think it could happen. But this could be, a preview of the Big 12 championship game. Like I firmly believe that whoever wins this game, all it's going to determine is who's going to be wearing that darker color in Arlington. I mean, that would be a really cool way to end the Big 12 season. You start it with K-State and Iowa State, and you end it with K-State and Iowa State. I think it's very possible. I do agree though that it does feel like if K-State doesn't, if they're not at least, close to the Big 12 championship game this year, it might feel like kind of a failed season. It's going to be hard to say that if you win 9 games, it's not a successful year, but if they go 8-4, that's going to be a disappointing year. So
Yeah.
I think that if they win nine games or more, you're going to be happy, but anything less than 9 games, I think, would be considered a failure this year.
So with Kansas State too, and just the Big 12 as a whole, I mean, or for Iowa State as a whole, looking at the games following Dublin, one, I'm shocked both teams have to play the
Yeah,
following week. That's really surprising to me. Iowa State has to play South Dakota, and then Iowa State goes and plays in the Cyhawk game.
right.
Kansas State has a very similar trek where it's not an easy next 2 weeks
Yeah.
following this trip.
No, it's not. It's interesting. And Chris Kleiman's reasoning was, a lot of the teams who go over and play week 0, well, they come back, then they don't play the next week, then they play the week after that. It's kind of like week 1 again because all the mistakes that you had in week 0, you can't come out and correct immediately. Right? These teams are so routine oriented. They just want to get the season rolling. And so I do think it's at least a good thing for K-State and Iowa State that, Iowa State, they get to play South Dakota. And obviously, we know that that's a team. I believe they are number 3 in the FCS poll. Like, that's a really, really good
Yeah.
FCS team. K State plays North Dakota, who's traditionally been pretty good as well. So
Yep.
it's not like it's an easy road. K State has to play Army after that, not to the level of Iowa, but like again,
But a team that you have to strategize
exactly.
completely different for.
Exactly. And I think that's what adds a layer to this because you cannot have a hangover. Whoever loses this game, you have to come back ready to go. Because if you show up and you do have a hangover, then there's a really good chance you start 0-2 or even worse.
I mean, I just, again, I understand the whole, you don't want to feel like you're starting week 1 over again. That's a really tough stretch for both of these teams. But you're going over to Dublin, so I want to ask you, any big plans that you got with the family going over there? Should be really cool.
Yeah, we booked a city tour, so we're gonna get on
Nice.
a bus and we're gonna do the whole touristy thing. And I'm a big museum guy, so they have an immigrant museum, an
Oh,
Irish
very
immigrant
cool.
museum. So we're gonna go and visit a museum down there, and then on Sunday after the game, we're gonna go out to the countryside and see some of the cliffs, aka the moors, is what they call them in Ireland. So should be a fun time.
That'll be really cool. Before I let you go, just a way too early college football playoff. Like, who out of the Power Five conferences, who do you think's going to be representing them? And for the Big 12, since you're more familiar with them, who do you think are the 2 teams playing in Arlington?
Yeah, so I'll start there. I do think K-State gets, or K-State, I do think the Big 12 gets 2 teams in the college football playoff this year. So I think that that's a very realistic possibility. Now, here's the question. For Iowa State, I think they could easily be one of those teams. Again, as I said, I think that if they lose this game, they're still very much,
Yeah.
alive. The problem with this is though their non-conference schedule. We know that, Iowa State traditionally has done pretty well in the Big 12, and I get that they beat Iowa last year, but that's always going to be one of those games to where it's like another conference game because it could be a win or it could be a loss. And so I think that if they win that game, even if they lose to K-State, if they can beat Iowa, then they put themselves in pretty good position. The problem with that is you don't want to have to start 2-2 or 1-2 if you're Iowa State because then it gets very difficult. Then you can't have any slip ups. So I think the path to the college football playoffs is a little bit more difficult for Iowa State. But I still think that they have a great chance to end up in the Big 12 championship game. I do believe that K State will be in the Big 12 championship game. I haven't fully decided yet, but if I were to lean one way or the other, I think this will be Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game. The question then becomes, is there a third team who's in contention for the college football playoff? Because if that third team doesn't get into the Big 12 championship game and Iowa State goes in 10-2, but only one conference loss, what happens after that? Do they have to win that game to make it to the college football playoff or not? We'll see what happens. I think the Big 12 will get 2 teams in. And, as far as the SEC, I don't care. That's that's kind of
I
how I
like
am.
it.
I,
I like it.
kind of how I am. Like whatever happens after that happens. I don't think I think Texas. I'm worried about Texas this year. Maybe they'll go out and beat Ohio State week 1. I'm not as high on Texas as everybody is. The whole Arch Manning thing, like if he was good enough to start last year, and you're telling me he couldn't start over Quinn Ewers, who was a 7th round draft pick. I don't think enough people are talking about that. So maybe he shuts
Thank
me up
you.
against Ohio State.
I'm
We'll
the
see.
same way. I'm
Yeah.
the same way of like, man, the Manning hype, we've heard it for 3 years or whatever.
Yeah.
It feels like it's been 8 years of hype.
Right.
But no, I'm with you on that one. But man, hearing these conversations, I've been waiting so long to break down way too early college football projections and all this. So I really appreciate you doing this for me, Cole, and definitely would love to get you back on during basketball season as well.
No doubt about it. Thanks, Justin.
A huge thank you to Cole for coming on the show here today. Going to have John Walters to give the Cyclones' point of view on Wednesday's show, so don't miss it. A lot of fun stuff this week as we hit week 0 of college football here on the Media Row podcast. But before we wrap up today, need to give a shout out to Stevens Automotive and Sales at 5320 Northwest Beaver Drive in Johnston, Iowa. 35 years of family owned and operated here in the state. Great communication with their customers. They make sure that you are safe and ready to go on the road. There's no BS involved with anything. They are there. They are loyal. They are true. Great people in the state, and someone that I will send literally anyone to. If you're just looking to get a brand new car, go to Stevens Automotive and Sales. If you're looking to get a starter car for maybe a family member just getting out on the road for the first time, do what my family did. Go to Stevens Automotive and Sales. And if you need any of your car work done, oil changes, anything, go to Stevens Automotive and Sales. Wonderful people, 35 years of family owned and operated here in this state. Stevens Automotive and Sales, 5320 Northwest Beaver Drive in Johnston, Iowa. Make sure when you go to let them know that Media Roast sent you. That will do it for today's show. Make sure to tune in Wednesday. John Walters, voice of the Iowa State Cyclones, coming on to talk Cyclones and Wildcats in Dublin for the Week 0 kickoff here on the Media Row podcast.